What is masculinity to you?
Man. Well, I mean, the thing about the Boy Scouts, and I've already made the point, but just to belabor it a little, it was not a safe space. It didn't feel safe when I was 12, and it didn't feel safe when I was 17. And I got my eagle, and I went on and I lived my life. Dirty jobs blew up, and I wrote 50,000 letters to Eagle Scouts in the country before I stopped. I couldn't do it anymore, but I literally sent out 50,000 letters
Wow, that's awesome.
because it did matter to me. We had a boxing ring in the troop room where young boys could settle their differences with, of course, an adjudicated ref. Right? I learned to shoot in the Boy Scouts, bows, arrows, and guns. Whitewater Rapids, camping for a week at a time with hunting, like all that stuff. I don't know. I don't know what's happening in the movement today, but I do believe the country still needs the Boy Scouts. We need Future Farmers of America. We need Skills USA. We need the 4-H. And later in life, we need the Rotarians and the JCs and the Kiwanis and the Lions Club and all that. That's the grout that holds polite society together. So I worry that all of that is is going the way of shame. You're right. It's all been
The only thing you can be
smoothed
ashamed
out.
of is being a man.
Seems like it.
You can be if you're a man, if you're like masculine, and I'm not even like the most masculine guy. I'm like a creative. I get blubbery
Yeah.
watching Mike Rowe videos on the internet.
No, I know. Look, it's really
But-
hard to. I gave a eulogy 3 weeks ago in the National Cathedral for a 92-year-old guy named Clint Hill. Ring any bells?
It does sound vaguely familiar.
Clint was the guy who dove on the back of the Kennedy limousine moments after the president was killed. He was assigned to that detail, and he guarded Jackie for years. Before that, he guarded Eisenhower. After that, he guarded Johnson, and then Nixon, and then Ford. 5 presidents. 5 presidents this guy guarded. I met him 7 years ago in a bar. He's just an older man trying to order a drink, and the bartender had never heard of the drink, and the guy pulled a business card out of his jacket pocket, and on the card was a picture of a cocktail with the instructions on how to make it. And on the top of the card, it said, "The Clint." So I'm in. Like, if you're me, you can't walk through this life and not. So I have questions, right? And
Here's a story. There's a story right here.
my God, dude, he was the most interesting man in the world for real. So an hour later, we're sitting down, and now I'm up to speed. By the way, this is the night before President's Day, 2019, 18 maybe, and he tells me the stories of what he had done and his life in the service and what he had sacrificed and the PTSD that he had wrestled with, and we talked about dirty jobs, and we talked about shooting cows and castrating lambs, and he was from North Dakota, and he grew up on a farm, and you know, and he was from another generation, truly the greatest generation, and we became friends that night. And I went home, and I wrote back to the mudroom and Facebook. I said, President's Day is tomorrow, and as we think about the men who have led this country, maybe we also think about the men and women who pledged their lives to protect them. And I posted a picture of his business card along with a picture of his book, 5 Presidents. And I kind of recommended the book. Anyway, the next morning, my publisher called me. Happened to be the same publisher. I didn't know it. 20,000 people had bought the book. 8 million people had read the story of Clint Hill. And so we became friends, and I became friends with his wife, who was also my neighbor. Long story short, she asked me to speak at the National Cathedral, along with the head of the Secret Service and herself. And I've given a lot of speeches, and I've been in front of a lot of crowds and a lot of people. But standing there talking about this man who I met in a bar, just a couple of dudes talking about work and sacrifice and risk, you know, and then getting to know him through the books that he and his wife had written. And then seeing him interact with my mom, who came to visit me, and the way he walked her to the car in the driving rain, you know, and held the umbrella over her, this old man, and walked through the puddles, guiding her around, you know, and the way he stood whenever a woman came into the room, and the way that inspired me to start doing the same thing, right? And here I am. I'm a grown up. I'm an adult, but I'm learning things from this man who had this front row seat to our shared history, right? And I'm learning about him in real time as I'm drinking the Clint, which is an acquired taste, by the way, Campari and vodka and some other nonsense. I don't know. I gave him a lot of crap about it. It's like a pinkish drink. He's like, it's not pink, it's red. Okay. And so
It's light red. It's light red.
he was a consequential man. And I hope this is a good answer to your question, but as he got to trust me, he came on my podcast about 2 years ago. And I asked him to talk about something that I knew he didn't talk publicly about. And it was a couple years after the assassination, and he had hit rock bottom. And he just the guilt. He felt like he let the country down. And one night he walked out of a bar, fully clothed, straight into the Atlantic Ocean with no intention of coming out. The cop went in after him, saved his life. And so on the podcast, with cameras and everything, I'm like, so what about that? Where do you put that? And how does that inform your life today? And he was generous with his answer, and humble in his answer. And on the one hand, it made for a lovely exchange on the podcast. But then in the week that followed, I got maybe 100 emails from listeners who said that story completely turned me around. I've been wrestling with this, I've been wrestling with that. And several said, that story saved my life. If Clint Hill, a Superman,
Right.
if there ever was one, a man who could pull the faults back together, if that guy, you know, walked out in rain and back in rain, you know, as Robert Frost said, acquainted with the night, you know, that's the poem I recited at his funeral. But what he did in a quiet conversation on a podcast saved lives. And the fact that he was willing to talk to me about the darkest moment in his life that he had locked up all those years ago. Man, that's what being an adult is.
You embedded in there about as good a definition of how I think about what it means to be a man as I can imagine, which is hard work, risk, and sacrifice. Because, and below the surface of those is courage, because you got to have that to do those things. And it is not to say that there aren't women that have those traits, but we are called as men in particular, I think, to do that, to work, to sacrifice, to take risks. We are the one that lets our kid climb too high in the tree. And we're there. I mean, I have pictures of my son, because he loves to climb, climbing to levels where I'm like, oh, he could break his fucking neck if he falls out of this tree, but not losing my mind. And it's clear that we're built for that. We're built. Warren Farrell says that we're expendable in a certain sense because of this. It's like we are the ones that get sent out to the front lines to be mowed down in war, which it'd be lovely if we could dispense with war, but there's no sign of that as far as all of human history. But we're the ones that do that, by and large. Keeping that at the foreground and finding a way to be grateful for it seems like it's a pretty important part of maybe keeping this society going forward. What do you think?
I think it's a neat trick. Look, it's only the hardest thing in the world to do. And I don't know really. I mean, I really do wrestle with this. Just like your example just now, two things can be true at the same time. I completely agree that giving your boy the latitude to climb too high is something we're called upon to do. I also know that the odds of somebody in the audience dealing with the fact that their kid fell and now can't walk are possible. Is that person listening? What can I say to that person that resonates in the same way? Does my audience, who the hell is out there really? This is what keeps me up at night, because this is my chosen field and I must be this tall to get on the ride, and I am, so boohoo, Mike, deal with it. But when I think about Clint Hill, and I think about everybody, every man that I know who at some point in his life had to take a bite of the crap sandwich and walk something back, and right, do a thing that they said they weren't gonna do. I just find it poignant and endlessly poetic, and I'm afraid that if we had a really good answer to your question, like playbook, oh, so that's it. Good work. My work is done. I gotta go. It's like I think we would lose the poetry. And back to Frankl, the search for meaning. I don't know that we're meant, and I know this sounds a bit glib and like a dodge, but I don't know that we're meant to answer your questions. I don't know that they're answerable, and I don't know that all the books that have been written in service of those queries really do the job.
If you like this clip, you should check out the full video and all the other great content we've got at Dad Saves America. So be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss our new stuff as it drops each week.